I never thought I'd be the one saying this. But here I am. I died. And when I crossed over, Jesus himself showed me what's about to shake this world to its core: the sudden deaths of 3 world leaders. And a man-made tsunami built in secret to wipe out millions. If that sounds impossible, I get it. I wouldn't have believed it either, until I saw it with my own eyes. It was an ordinary Tuesday night in Franklin, Tennessee. The air outside was cool for late summer, just enough breeze to rattle the leaves on the big oak tree out front. My wife, Martha, was in the kitchen, rinsing the dinner plates. I had just walked into the bedroom, ready for my nightly prayer. 40 years of pastoring a small-town church had taught me the value of routine, and prayer before bed was a rhythm I never broke. I knelt down by the side of our queen-sized bed, the same spot where I'd prayed thousands of times before, and asked God something I'd been carrying in my heart for months. Lord, help me reach their hearts again. I meant my congregation. Lately, they seemed distracted, more focused on politics, the news, or the stock market than the message of the gospel. I'd been struggling to connect, to pierce through that noise. I was asking God for guidance. But before I could even say, Amen, a sharp, searing pain tore through my chest. It wasn't like the dull ache I'd felt during stress. This was crushing, like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed the life right out of it. I gasped for air. The bedroom walls tilted and blurred. The quilt on the bed, the lamp on Martha's nightstand, they all spun in and out of focus. My ears filled with a strange, rushing sound, like a river in flood. And then, everything went silent. At first, I thought I was fainting. But the silence was too deep, the stillness too perfect. I couldn't feel the weight of my own body anymore. It was as if I'd been unhooked from gravity, from pain, from the ticking clock of this world. Darkness closed in around me, but it wasn't the kind you fear. It was warm, still, like floating in deep water on a windless night. Then came the pull. It wasn't violent, more like a steady current, drawing me forward. I saw a light in the distance. And as it grew, I realized I was moving toward it without taking a single step. Figures passed by me in the glow. I couldn't make out their faces, but I felt their warmth, like they'd been waiting here long before I arrived. And at the end of that light, I saw him, Jesus. I can't explain how I knew it was him, but I did. His presence filled everything, not just the space in front of me, but the space inside me. My fear was gone. My questions went quiet. All that remained was this overwhelming certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. But he didn't greet me with words, not at first. He showed me. The first vision hit like a wave, so vivid I forgot I'd even left my body. It was only the beginning, but it would lead me to see things no man should ever see, and leave me with a message the world cannot afford to ignore. Before that night, my life was simple, predictable in the best possible way. Franklin isn't a big city. You can drive from one end of Main Street to the other in under 10 minutes if the traffic lights cooperate. On Saturday mornings, the farmer's market fills the square with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of bluegrass fiddles. Folks greet each other by name, and nobody's in such a hurry that they can't stop for a quick chat over a cup of coffee. My wife, Martha, and I had been in the same little white clapboard house for over 3 decades. We'd painted the porch twice, replaced the roof once, and planted rose bushes that now climbed halfway up the front windows. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, and every corner carried memories, from the faint coffee stain on the kitchen counter to the creak in the hallway floorboard that never did go away. For 40 years, I'd pastored the First Gospel Church of Franklin. It's not much to look at, just a steeple, a bell, and rows of wooden pews that smell faintly of pine no matter how many times you polish them. But to me, that building was holy ground. I'd baptized children there, married young couples under its roof, and stood beside grieving families as they laid loved ones to rest. My whole life's work was wrapped up in those walls. People came to me for advice, about faith, about family, sometimes about how to fix a lawnmower. That's the kind of town Franklin is. You don't just lead from the pulpit, you led from the grocery store aisle, the ball field, and the front porch. But in recent months, I'd felt something shift. It's hard to explain unless you've been a pastor yourself. But there's a certain way you can feel the temperature of a congregation, not with your hands, but with your heart. Mine told me that people were different, not colder exactly, but distracted, more concerned about stock prices, Washington politics, or whatever the news was shouting about that week than about their own souls. The prayer meetings grew smaller. The conversations after Sunday service grew shorter. People still smiled, still shook my hand, but there was a hollowness in their eyes, like their hearts were somewhere else. I tried sermons about love, about patience, about staying rooted in the Word during troubled times. But the truth was, even I could feel the pull of the noise outside, the constant stream of headlines, the chatter on the radio, the endless scrolling on cell phones. It was as if the whole town had started living in a fog. That's why, on that Tuesday night, I prayed the way I did. Kneeling by my bed, I asked God not for bigger crowds or louder amens, but for the right words, the kind that cut through the fog and woke people up inside. I didn't know it then, but that prayer was about to be answered in a way I could never have imagined. Because in just a few minutes, my world, the little White House, the quiet town, the familiar pews, would fall away, and I'd be pulled into a place where the stakes were higher, the visions sharper, and the message far too urgent to ignore. That Tuesday night started just like any other. After Martha finished loading the dishwasher, she called out from the kitchen, "Don't stay up too late, Caleb." I smiled to myself. She always said that, even though I hadn't been a night owl since my 20s. I poured myself a glass of water, feeling the faint ache in my knees from a long day on my feet. Earlier, I'd visited the hospital to pray with a member of our congregation. Then spent the afternoon preparing Sunday's sermon. Nothing unusual, but something in the air felt heavy. It wasn't the weather. The forecast had promised clear skies all week. It wasn't my health, aside from the usual creaks and groans of a 68-year-old body. I felt fine. It was something harder to name, like the quiet before a summer storm. I brushed it off and stepped into the bedroom. The soft yellow light from the lamp on Martha's nightstand gave the room its usual warmth. Our bedspread, the same one we'd had for years, smelled faintly of lavender from the detergent. On the wall above the dresser, the old family photo of us with the kids from a church picnic hung slightly crooked, just the way it always had. I knelt down at my side of the bed, the left side, by the window, and folded my hands. My prayer started the same as it always did: gratitude for the day, blessings for Martha, protection for our family, and strength for the people I served. But then my words shifted. "Lord, I can feel them slipping." I whispered, "They're still coming to church, but their hearts, they're somewhere else. Help me reach them. God, help me speak in a way that wakes them up." I didn't know why I said it with such urgency that night. Maybe it was that heaviness in the air pressing down on me. Maybe it was the weeks of watching my congregation grow quieter, more distracted. And then it happened. A sharp, crushing pain exploded in the center of my chest. My breath caught. My right hand instinctively clutched my shirt as if I could hold my heart together. It felt like someone had wrapped a steel band around my ribs and was tightening it with each passing second. The glass of water I'd left on the nightstand seemed to tilt in my vision. The edges of the room began to ripple, as if the air itself were bending. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears, loud and unsteady. "Martha," I tried to call out, but my voice came out thin, almost swallowed by the rush of sound in my head. My knees buckled under me. I felt myself tipping forward, my hands hitting the carpet, the smell of dust filling my nose. The lamplight seemed to stretch and twist, fading into something distant. And then, silence. Not the kind of silence you get when the power goes out and you suddenly realize how many hums and clicks a house makes. This was deeper, a complete absence. No heartbeat, no breath, no time. The weight of my body was gone. My knees no longer pressed into the floor. My chest no longer burned for air. I wasn't standing. I wasn't kneeling. I wasn't anything. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't. The heaviness I'd felt all day was gone, replaced with a stillness that seemed to reach through me. And in that stillness, Something began to pull me forward. The pull was steady, almost gentle, yet I knew there was no resisting it. I wasn't walking, floating, or even moving in any way I could understand. It was more like my whole being was drawn forward by something beyond space or time. Up ahead, a light began to grow. At first, it was no bigger than the head of a pin, just a speck in the darkness. But with every moment, it swelled, warm and inviting, until it filled my vision entirely. Shapes began to pass me, not shadows exactly, but outlines, glowing softly, like people lit from within. I couldn't make out their faces, but I felt their presence, their kindness. It was like walking through a crowd where every stranger somehow knew me and welcomed me without saying a word. The closer I got to the light, the less I thought about what I had left behind. The bed, the carpet, Martha's worried voice, all of it faded like the end of a dream. Then, all at once, I was there. The light didn't blind me the way sunlight does when it reflects off water. Instead, it wrapped around me, soaking into every part of who I was. I felt it in my chest, my thoughts, even in the places inside me I didn't know were wounded. And then I saw him. Jesus. I can't tell you how I knew it was him. There were no name tags in this place, no introductions, but his presence was unmistakable. It was like meeting the author of your life's story and realizing you've known him since before you were born. He didn't rush toward me, and I didn't run to him. We were simply there, together. No barriers, no questions, no fear. He didn't speak at first, but I could feel his thoughts, his love, pouring into me like warm sunlight on a cold day. Then, his voice came, not through my ears, but deep in my soul. My son, he said, you have been chosen to bear witness. You must take what you will see and bring it back. The time has come. My heart, or whatever part of me existed in that place, tightened. What time? What was I about to see? And why me? Before I could even form the questions fully, the world around us began to shift. The light didn't disappear, but it stretched into a new scene, like a curtain pulling back on the first act of a play. And that was when the visions began. The first vision unfolded like a film playing on the largest screen I'd ever seen. Only I wasn't watching it, I was in it. At first, I stood beside a narrow stream. But the water wasn't water at all. It shimmered and glowed, flowing upward as if gravity had no hold on it. And then I realized what it was: prayers. Thousands upon thousands of prayers, all rising toward heaven. Some were so faint they were little more than a whisper, rippling the surface like the softest breeze. Others surged with power and clarity, like a river in full flood. They came from every direction, every language, every corner of the earth. From a child's quiet, "Help me," whispered under a blanket, to an old man's tearful, "Thank you," spoken in the stillness of dawn. It was beautiful, but as I followed the stream, its banks began to change. The lush green grass turned pale and brittle. The sound of flowing prayers grew thinner. Soon, the stream squeezed through a vast desert, a wasteland of dry, cracked earth that stretched as far as I could see. Here, the stream struggled to keep moving. The air was still and heavy, and the heat pressed down like a weight. I could hear faint voices, but most were lost to the emptiness. I understood. This desert was not a place on any map. It was the state of human hearts. People had turned away from God, chasing what glittered but didn't last: money, status, fleeting pleasures. Their prayers had dried up, their souls thirsty without even realizing it. And then, I saw a movement. From the edges of the desert came figures dressed in wool, like shepherds, but their eyes gave them away. Cold, cunning, calculating, wolves in sheep's clothing. They moved among the people with easy smiles, speaking words that sounded kind and wise on the surface. Yet their words carried a poison I could feel in the air. They told half-truths and clever lies, twisting what was good into something hollow. Behind them, I saw shadows, entire systems and trends slithering across the desert, each promising progress but leaving only division and doubt in their wake. And then, in the middle of it all, I saw her, the Blessed Mother. Mary stood in a faint, shimmering glow, her eyes brimming with tears. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. Her grief was a weight in the air, pressing against my chest. She wept for the pride of people who thought they no longer needed God. I wanted to reach out, to do something, but I couldn't move. All I could do was witness. Then the vision began to fade, and I knew something worse was coming next. The vision shifted so quickly I barely had time to catch my breath, if I even had breath in that place. One moment, I was standing in that desert of dry hearts and wolves in disguise. The next, I found myself in a massive hall, bright with stage lights and filled with thousands of people. The energy in the air was electric, clapping, cheering, camera flashes popping like fireworks. On the stage stood a man I knew instantly was a world leader from Europe. Tall, well-dressed, his voice carried the confidence of someone used to being listened to. He gestured with authority, his words pulling the crowd in closer. And then, in a single heartbeat, it happened. He collapsed. No stumble, no gasp for air, just a sudden, lifeless drop, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The crowd froze for a moment, then erupted into chaos. People rushed toward the stage. Security shouted into radios. Reporters shouted over one another. I could feel it in my spirit. This was no heart attack. No accident. Something unseen had reached in and taken his life. Before I could dwell on it, the vision jerked me away again. Now I was in a gleaming, high-tech convention center in Asia. Massive screens covered the walls, displaying numbers, images, and slogans in bright colors. At the center of it all stood another leader, younger, smiling, shaking hands with guests. Then, without warning, a blast ripped through the stage. The force knocked people off their feet, shattering glass and sending metal beams crashing to the floor. Smoke filled the air, and screams rose in every direction. I didn't need anyone to tell me, this, too, was deliberate, planned. The scene shifted once more, and I was in a crowded public square somewhere in Africa. Music played, flags waved, and people danced in celebration. At the center was a leader addressing his people, his voice rising above the noise. And then, in a moment so fast it almost didn't seem real, soldiers rushed the stage. Gunfire cracked through the air. The leader fell, blood staining the concrete beneath him. The crowd scattered, screaming. 3 leaders, 3 deaths, 3 continents, all in quick succession. But the visions didn't stop there. I saw television anchors fumbling for words, markets plummeting, streets filling with protests, neighbors shouting at each other, alliances breaking apart like glass under pressure. And then I heard his voice again, steady but heavy with grief. This is the spark, my son. This will set the fire. I didn't yet know what kind of fire he meant, but deep inside, I felt it. The world had just been pushed past a point of no return. The fire he spoke of didn't appear as a single blaze in one place. It spread like lightning across dry grass, leaping from city to city, continent to continent. I saw the anger first. It began as small sparks in people's hearts, frustration, resentment, a desire for revenge, but it grew fast, feeding on fear. The death of each leader became a rallying cry for division. Political parties blamed each other. Nations pointed fingers at their rivals. News screens everywhere showed footage of protests turning violent. Crowds chanting in languages I couldn't understand. But I didn't need to. The rage in their voices was universal. Windows shattered. Fires burned in the streets. In some places, soldiers marched. In others, gangs ruled. Then the vision pulled me somewhere I never expected, deep under the ocean. At first, I thought I was drifting through complete darkness. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw massive structures anchored to the seafloor. They looked like steel fortresses, with towers, cables, and machinery so complex I couldn't guess their purpose. Figures in white suits and helmets moved among them, checking gauges and typing on glowing screens. They didn't speak, but their movements were precise, calculated. It was the kind of efficiency you see in people who believe completely in their mission, even if that mission is pure evil. I understood then. These were not research labs. These were weapons. One machine in particular drew my attention. It was enormous, longer than a football field, with curved plates and giant turbines. Around it, lights flashed red and green. Screens displayed lines of data racing upward. I could feel the vibration in the water. A low hum building towards something powerful and terrible. Then I saw the control panel. One of the technicians entered a code, paused, and looked toward another man, who gave a slow, deliberate nod. And that's when it hit me. They weren't trying to defend their nations. They were preparing to unleash something. Something unnatural. A man-made tsunami. The thought chilled me deeper than the ocean around us. This wasn't nature's wrath. This was calculated vengeance, born from human pride and hatred. The machine roared to life. The ocean floor trembled, sending plumes of sand into the water. I could feel the pressure building, the energy coiling like a spring ready to snap. And then, without warning, the water began to move, not the gentle sway of tides, but a violent, sucking pull, as if the sea itself had been yanked backward. I rose through the water, and suddenly I was above the surface, looking down at coastlines around the world. In every place I looked, the same thing was happening. The sea pulled away, exposing reefs, rocks, even shipwrecks that had been hidden for centuries. People ran to sea, pointing, laughing, not understanding the horror that was coming. Then I saw them, the waves. Walls of black water, higher than skyscrapers, racing toward the shore. Their tops curled forward like claws, and their roar drowned out every other sound. In an instant, the world's coasts vanished beneath them. The waves struck with a force that defied reason. They didn't just crash onto the shore, they devoured it. I watched as entire coastlines disappeared in seconds. Sandy beaches, once dotted with umbrellas and children's laughter, were swallowed without a trace. Harbors were ripped apart, ships thrown like toys into the streets. Concrete piers splintered, warehouses collapsed into heaps of twisted metal. In the cities, skyscrapers groaned before snapping in half, their glass and steel skeletons dragged away by the relentless current. Bridges gave way as if made of paper. Highways vanished beneath the churning water. Cars bobbed like corks before being pulled under, their headlights glowing faintly until the sea swallowed them whole. And the people, God help me, the people, I saw them running, parents clutching children, friends grabbing each other's hands, strangers pulling strangers toward higher ground. But the water was faster. It surged through streets, knocking people off their feet, pulling them into the dark, foaming depths, faces twisted in terror, mouths open in screams I couldn't hear over the roar. I could feel the cold, not on my skin, but deep in my spirit. It was the cold of hopelessness, the instant a soul realizes there is no escape. Then his voice came again, cutting through the chaos like a bell through fog. This is not the work of my creation, my son. This is the fruit of man's pride, man's hatred. The words hit harder than the waves themselves. This wasn't a storm born from shifting winds and tides. This was an act, deliberate, engineered, calculated for maximum destruction. I wanted to argue. I wanted to ask why. Why would anyone unleash such horror? But before the thought could form, I knew the answer. Power. Revenge. The twisted satisfaction of proving they could command even the oceans. The vision swept me across the world, from one coast to another. Tokyo's neon lights vanished under black water. San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge bent and broke. Sydney's Opera House crumbled like sandcastles. Inland, the waves didn't stop. They tore through neighborhoods, turned streets into rivers, set fires where power lines fell into the flood. Survivors clung to rooftops, to trees, to anything that would hold them above the current. Their cries reached for heaven, raw and desperate, and in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a disaster. It was a judgment, allowed to unfold so the world could see what comes of unrepentant arrogance. But even as I watched the destruction, a question burned inside me. Could anything be saved after this? The vision carried me far from the coasts now drowned beneath the sea. I was looking at America, my home, but not the America I had known. What I saw was a nation stretched past its breaking point. The economy was gasping, drained by years of endless wars overseas. Our soldiers, once proud and sharp, now marched with weary eyes and heavy shoulders, their boots dragging across foreign soil, in the heat of foreign deserts and the ruins of distant cities. They carried rifles like anchors, not symbols of victory. but of burden. Back home, factories worked day and night, churning out weapons and supplies under flickering fluorescent lights. The workers moved like machines themselves, tired, hollow, surviving shift to shift. Even with all this effort, it was never enough. Resources thinned, tempers shortened, and I saw something far worse than war abroad, war within. Our streets were tense, lined with angry protests, not just against the government, but against each other. Families split down the middle over politics, faith, and the future. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Old friends turned to strangers. Conversations that once ended in laughter now ended in slammed doors. Then came the strike from within. I saw cities go dark, entire power grids collapsing in an instant. Hospital machines froze, elevators stopped between floors, traffic lights died mid-intersection, causing chaos in the streets. It wasn't an accident, it was calculated. Sleeper cells and hidden networks, long waiting for the perfect moment, moved in silence. Bombs exploded in places no one expected. A quiet coffee shop in Chicago, a subway platform in New York, an airport terminal in Dallas. The fear that followed was suffocating. People began to see enemies in every face, shadows in every alley. The greatest threat wasn't just out there anymore. It was here, in our own neighborhoods. I could feel the wound tearing through the soul of the country. It wasn't just buildings and bodies being broken, it was trust. Trust in each other, trust in the idea of us. And through it all, his voice came again, steady but sorrowful. My people have grown distracted. They have traded their spiritual armor for comfort and pride. And now the door is open. Those words hung in the air, heavy as stone, and in my heart, I knew the enemy wasn't only the one with weapons in hand. It was the pride and division we had allowed to take root inside our own hearts. The scenes of chaos, division, and destruction began to fade like the last frames of an old film reel. In their place, I felt warmth again, a light surrounding me, steady and unshaken. Jesus was there, not distant, not overshadowed by the visions, but close. I didn't have to speak. He already knew the questions in my heart. Could the world be saved? Was there still time? Was I enough for what he was asking? His eyes held mine, and his voice came soft but unwavering. Do not fear. My eyes are always on you, protecting you. I love you. You are the apple of my eye. My love for you is everlasting. Those words went deeper than any warning, deeper than any fear. They weren't just meant to comfort me. They were meant to anchor me. I understood then that no matter how dark the days ahead, his light would not leave us. The light began to pull away, and I felt the strange sensation of being drawn backward, as if through a curtain. My spirit sank back into my body, and the world around me slowly returned. Beep, beep, beep. The steady rhythm of hospital monitors was the first sound I heard. My eyes opened to the dim light of the room, the smell of antiseptic, and Martha's face just inches from mine. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her smile was radiant. Caleb, oh, thank God, you're awake, she whispered, gripping my hand. A young doctor stepped forward, his voice still shaky. Pastor, your heart stopped for nearly 15 minutes. This is a miracle. They saw it as survival. I knew it was a calling. When I returned to the pulpit weeks later, I didn't give them every detail of the visions. If I told them about the man-made tsunami or the deaths of 3 leaders, I knew it might paralyze them with fear. Instead, I spoke of what those visions had burned into me, the urgency of repentance, the power of prayer, the need to keep our lamps full of oil, ready for the moment he calls. I told them about the wolves in sheep's clothing, about how the battle wasn't just out there in the world, but in here, in our hearts. And I told them there is hope, not in politics, not in power, but in the one who holds all things in his hands. Some in the congregation nodded through tears. Others sat in silence, processing. A few shifted uncomfortably. That was fine. The truth rarely leaves everyone comfortable. Since that day, I have lived differently. Every conversation matters. Every prayer matters. I don't know how much time we have before the visions unfold. But I do know this. The signs are already here. And now I'm asking you, if you had seen what I've seen, Would you change the way you live? Or would you wait until the waves were at your door?